Hello friends, it's time for another political video. There is a reason that I have all of the guns and knives out here on the desk. It is related. I was reticent to make this video. Who needs more political shit in their lives? But I think this one's important. So I've kind of answered a lot of the stuff that I hear from folks on the right, but I haven't answered the left, and I get attacked by the left just as often. Some days more so. So as you may know, if you're one of the 4 people who regularly watch my terrible videos, I'm what you'd probably call a liberal. I'm not a Democrat, and I don't support the party necessarily because I despise identity politics, but I'm definitely what you'd call a liberal, and I'm just knocking shit all over the place. So let me list my liberal credentials for you. I abhor any limitations on what one can do with one's body. I'm pro-choice. I oppose laws that criminalize drug use. I support animal rights, and I like government assistance. Most of all, you probably wouldn't like my view on large corporations. So there's your proof that I'm exactly the sort of dirty commie that you were warned about in church. I can hear you clacking away in the comments right now. So I'm not a libertarian, as is often said. I'm definitely a liberal. But there are a few things that make me different. In the same way that I oppose all laws limiting what one can do with one's own body, I oppose any and all gun control, mostly for the same reasons. I oppose any and all restrictions on free speech. It's not the government's place to tell you what you can call someone. In other words, as the first 2 amendments are concerned, I'm an absolutist, and I detest this modern idea that our founding document needs tweaking to meet our present needs. That's an utter horseshit, my friends. So I can hear you saying right now, what's the goddamn point, Gun Penguin? Well, like I said, I get attacked by both sides, and that's to be expected, but I really do need to answer the folks on the left, because I get more and more messages from them, and I've pretty much left a lot of that stuff unanswered. But I'm going to do this by responding to one specific comment, as it really encapsulates almost all of what other folks have said. I also like this comment because this person was calm, kind, and relatively sane. I make these videos hoping to inspire real debate and maybe some cross-party friendship. That sort of warm, fuzzy stuff is the majority of the comments. But then there are the really crazy ones. I see a lot of incoherent vitriol, tachycardic, punctuation-free, crazy person rants, and for those people, I feel sad. So I felt it best to respond to one of the less sane ones. Nothing good ever comes from addressing the nutbags. And before we go any further, I want to share something with you, something that I've never discussed in a video, but it's very important here, and it'll give you an idea of why I believe the things that I do. A few years ago, someone very close to me was in a shooting at work. People died. Luckily, this person escaped unharmed, and I just couldn't help but think, what if it had gone the other way? This person is very, very dear to me. She's the person that I love most in the world. Replaying the events in hindsight, it was very clear that if someone had been armed, there might have been no deaths other than the shooter. So whether you like it or not, a mass shooting can most easily and quickly be stopped by another armed person. It doesn't matter if you disagree. It doesn't matter if you don't like it. It doesn't matter. It's simply the way it is. It's a fact. All the outrage in the world will do nothing to change that, and it will do nothing to bring back the people who died afraid and crying, completely powerless to stop their own deaths. But on to tonight's topic. I grow tired of Republicans and Democrats. We can't let ourselves be blindly loyal to either of those 2 parties in the face of all reason, senselessly hating the other side. It's fucking sad that we even view the world and the people in it as being on one of 2 separate sides. I love folks on the right, I love folks on the left, and everyone like me stuck in the middle. And I don't know. I just, I do feel like things are getting better, but we've still got a very long way to go. And comments like this show me that we're not even close. So let's address the left. I'll read this exactly as it is, exactly as it was left for me, typos and all. Here's the comment. Because I haven't cleaned up the grammar or punctuation, there's going to be a lot of stumbles here. It's tough to read something that's not edited for clarity. So the comment goes like this. Sorry, but as a liberal that supports gun rights, I disagree with you in many ways. Guns shouldn't be banned, but there is plenty of common sense laws that could be implemented to reduce the number of deaths via firearms in this country. There's absolutely no reason why we should have 7 times as many firearm-related deaths in a year than Canada, where, contrary to popular belief, it is legal to own guns. While we shouldn't go as far as they do in certain regards, overall they do plenty of smart things. We should absolutely be tested to prove that you are the kind of individual that can safely own a firearm before you're allowed to buy one. The concealed carry course, which is borderline cannot be failed depending on who the instructor is so much easier than even the process of trying to get your firearms license or whatever they call it in Canada. We do the most basic ass background checks on people, which is why people that shouldn't own a gun get one and then commit a crime with it, commit suicide with it, are not mentally fit to own it, eventually snap and then kill others themselves with it, etc. I know I'm fit to own a firearm, yet I wouldn't have minded if it took an entire month before I ended up with it, but what actually happened is I was able to pick it up the same day my gun store received the firearm. That's insane that after I went there, the background check was completed within hours. This is how mentally ill people, and people literally on terrorism watch lists, end up buying a gun like it's nothing. It's an imperfect system. My entire family is staunchly Republican. I wasn't raised to be a modern-day Democrat. I reject your views on classical liberalism because, honestly, I think it's a problem. The classical liberal school of thought that you point out where the government shouldn't get involved in this or that is sadly the reason Democrats were the ones trying to keep slavery around while the Republicans were fighting against it all those years ago. Ironically, things have obviously changed and now the Republicans are the raving racists, but you get my point. I think a modern Democrat should support the government getting involved when appropriate, especially when it can help deter and lower the body counts in potential mass shootings. That directly leads into my last opinion on this subject. This one is definitely going to be frowned upon by other gun supporters. I don't think civilian ARs should be sold. I don't believe there's any reasonable reason that people should be allowed to be effectively as well equipped as the average infantryman. Let's be honest, bump stocks and the idea of automatic rifles are stupid and detract from the actual issue. Ask any soldier if they ever used their M4 or whatever rifle they may have been given in the automatic firing mode, and most will probably tell you no. They're practically trained to only use them semi-auto, as it's almost always way more effective to use them that way. The reason I'm pointing this out is because I'm trying to make it clear that once somebody has an AR-15 or any similar rifle, as I said above, they're effectively as well equipped as a soldier in the military. Why exactly is this legal and allowed? There's no practical reason for anybody to own an AR-15, AK-47, SCAR, any rifle based on a military-grade AR that can hold 30 rounds per mag. People buy them because they're fun and they can, not because there's a practical reason for them. You don't need one for self-defense. Concealed carry, hunting. Some assholes will use them for hunting, but you don't need a fucking AR-15 to shoot a deer. We're essentially making people the apex predator. There's nothing the police can do to effectively one-up a person with an AR-15. They can match the danger, but can't beat it because it's literally the pinnacle of handheld firearms. The fact that they're not only legal, but no more difficult to buy than a handgun in the majority of states is absurd. A lot of what we do in our laws can sometimes be described as mitigation. I count making it so a person that wants to shoot up a school use, let's say, a Glock 19 a mitigation. People will still die, but the overall body count will almost always be way lower given the natures of the guns. Rifle round wounds in general are more fatal due to there often being an entrance and exit wound, which may sound good to the uneducated, but it's actually way less survivable typically. Obviously, hollow points can do a lot of damage as well, but even so, I'd rather get shot by a handgun. Also, keep in mind that the AR-15 carries way more bullets per mag and is more accurate and easier to control. The guy that shot up that concert from a hotel room in California would have been a lot less effective without an AR, don't you agree? Well, that's also the wrong state, my friend. It did not happen in California. So that's the end of our comment there. Let's just take this point by point and dive in. This pretty much encapsulates what I hear from folks on the left. It's the same stuff over and over again. So first, we're met with the idea of common sense gun control. I hear this a lot. And the notion that we ought to be like Canada. This point has been beaten to death more than any aspect of the gun control argument. I'm going to gloss over this one and mostly hit the high points. Most of you can probably recite this argument and the rebuttal verbatim. Common sense gun control is the first stop on the road to a ban. That's it. And we're not Canada. The numbers aren't comparable for a host of reasons. Our population is greater. We have less access to mental health. We're not a homogenous cultural group, and we have a very different government. We aren't Canada. We aren't Australia. We aren't England. We aren't France. We're America. Why is it that liberals want to transform America into Europe or Canada? We're not Europe or Canada. We have a very different history and culture. The comparison simply is not apt. Liberals rail against conservatives for wanting to turn America back into the America of 1836, but then they discuss turning the country into a completely different country in the following breath. What the fuck gives? So to keep us all on the same page, I'm going to reread paragraphs from the comment as we go. Next, he says, we do the most basic ass background checks on people, which is why people that shouldn't own a gun get one and then commit a crime with it, commit suicide with it, are not mentally fit to own it, eventually snap and then kill themselves, others with it, etc. I know I'm fit to own a firearm, yet I wouldn't have minded if it took an entire month before I ended up with it. But what actually happened is I was able to pick it up the same day my gun store received the firearm. That's insane that after I went there, the background check was completed within hours. This is how mentally ill people and people literally on terrorism watch lists end up buying a gun like it's nothing. It's an imperfect system. End of quote. You're right, it is an imperfect system, but not for the reason that you describe. Also, you're saying it's crazy that your background checks take hours to go through? That fucking blows. Mine come back instantly most of the time. I'd be so mad if I had to wait a few hours to buy a new gun, or if I'm feeling really frisky that day, I have several new guns. There should be no background checks, and certainly no waiting period. Why? Because those things are unconstitutional. If that's not reason enough for you, though, which it probably isn't, I'll proceed. I'm going to take an angle that folks on the left probably haven't heard before. If you're a liberal, do you like Trump? Probably not. Do you like the folks in his administration? Again, I'm guessing no. Do you like the Republicans that control the Senate? I'd wager that you don't. Yet, you would be so willing to give the government that you presently detest the right to decide who is and isn't fit to own a gun? What's the purpose of a gun? To defend your home, yourself, and your family from other humans and animals? Sure. But if you read the Second Amendment, guns are mostly there for you to defend yourself from the government. But you would willingly let a government that you detest take that right away from you if you don't meet some criteria determined by them? If you scroll through the comments of my videos, you'll see Trump fans screaming that liberalism is a mental illness. That's another one that I hear all the time. I thought you said that mentally ill people ought not own guns. Why shouldn't they? Do folks with mental illnesses not get robbed? If anything, folks with mental illnesses are more likely to be taken advantage of, and perhaps the present government will decide that you're mentally ill. After all, you're no fan of our Lord and Savior, Donald J. Trump. The numbers of mentally ill people who commit crimes with guns, it's a relatively small number, yet you want to strip these people of their rights. You mentioned that folks buy guns and kill themselves with them. Who are you to deny someone the right to kill themselves however they deem fit? The right to live or die is the most basic choice that we can make. We have to preserve that right like any other. And again, you absolutely bend over backwards to surrender these rights to a government that you don't even like. You say you're mentally fit to own a gun, that you wouldn't have minded waiting a month for your gun. Again, what if the government deems you unfit? And some folks need a gun right now, right this second. If you're a young lady who lives alone and you're threatened, you need a gun right the fuck now, not in a month. Our comment moves on. He says, my entire family is staunchly Republican. I wasn't raised to be a modern-day Democrat. I reject your views on classical liberalism because honestly, I think it's a problem. The classical liberal school of thought that you point out where the government shouldn't get involved in this or that is sadly the reason Democrats were the ones trying to keep slavery around while the Republicans were fighting against it all those years ago. Ironically, things have obviously changed, and now the Republicans are the raving racists, but you get my point. I think a modern Democrat should support the government getting involved when appropriate, especially when it can help deter and lower the body counts in potential mass shootings. That directly leads into my last opinion on the subject. This one is definitely going to be frowned upon by other gun supporters. End of quote. Firstly, I've never claimed to be a Democrat, though I have voted that way often. Anyhow, I hear this one a lot too, that I'm a classical liberal rather than a modern one. Folks have an easier time if they can put me, and you, dear viewer, in an ideological box. I'm not really in anything, though classical liberalism is probably the closest thing to my entire ideological system, but still, the description is inadequate. Can your beliefs and thoughts be labeled by a few words? I certainly hope not. If they can, you're very dumb or very vapid. I think that he's really hung on the ancient argument of collectivism versus individualism, or the ideas that the needs of the group are most important versus the notion that the needs of the individual are most important. Speaking very broadly, very, very broadly, because look, we're trying to keep this relatively brief here. This video is probably still going to be a bazillion hours long, but generally, collectivism led to socialism, individualism led to libertarianism. That's grossly simplistic, but in a general sense, that's what happened. Our country was founded on individualistic ideas and classical liberalism, but not to some insane extreme. And look, slavery was going to be defended. And that's the argument that was chosen. And you can see how utterly flawed that is. Slavery is fucking disgusting, but it was making a lot of really disgusting people a lot of money. And they were going to devise some sort of argument to keep it in place. The government shouldn't interfere in the individual rights of states, they said, even if those states are committing disgusting, gross human rights violations, which they absolutely were. So they went to that age-old argument to try and maintain their ability to own and abuse other human beings. So there's a flawed argument for every heinous act. Don't blame the idea that an individual's rights are paramount for some horrifying acts. So in much the same way, you don't want to turn around and blame collectivism for Nazism and the Soviet purges. That's just poor arguing. Even though if you really wanted to, you could say, hey, well, here's what they were arguing. They were arguing that the needs of the many outweigh the rights of the few. But that's a bad argument. So don't use it here either. Like I said, for every heinous, disgusting act in human history, there's always some sort of ideological justification behind it, because nobody wants to think that they're a heinous monster committing horrifying human rights violations. No one wants to think that. So there's always that justification in the monster's mind. So yes, as you say, I do point at the government, and I say that the government shouldn't be involved in this or that, because I don't trust the government. I don't trust Trump. I don't trust senators. And really, I don't trust senators on either side. I don't trust members of the House on either side. They haven't proven themselves to be good custodians of our rights, because it's not in their best interest for us to have those rights. As a matter of respect, you should reconsider your assumption that I oppose all government. I just oppose all government involvement in my personal life. I've been on food stamps before. That government assistance saved my career and gave me a fresh start. Government can be great at preventing corporate exploitation of workers, providing a safety net between jobs, educating kids in a standardized way, providing standardized health care, or ensuring that, states don't commit horrifying, disgusting violations of human rights. Government has its place, but government can't protect me from someone who wants to rob my house. Government can't tell me what to do with my sex parts. Government can't tell me which chemicals to dump into my body, and government can't tell me whether I can kill myself or not. Those things are up to me. I understand that I'm picking some ludicrous examples here, but you see my point. Government has no place being involved with my mind or body. You trust Trump's government and the Republican Senate to look after you? Is that what you're saying? That is implied in your comment. They would turn the country into a theocracy with Christian doctrine at the core. That's not what you really want. You want the government to leave you alone because the government changes rather often, and you stand a very good chance of disliking the folks in power in a very short time. He moves on. I don't think civilian AR-15s should be sold. I'm sorry, he just calls them ARs. I don't think civilian ARs should be sold. I don't believe there's any reasonable reason that people should be allowed to be effectively as well equipped as the average infantryman. Let's be honest, bump stocks and the idea of automatic rifles are stupid and detract from the actual issue. Ask any soldier if they ever used their M4 or whatever rifle they may have been given in the automatic firing mode, and most will probably tell you no. They're practically trained to only use them semi-auto, as it's almost always way more effective to use them that way. The reason I'm pointing this out is because I'm trying to make it clear that once somebody has an AR-15 or any similar rifle, as I said above, they're effectively as well equipped as a soldier in the military. Ah, yes, AR-15s, the scary, evil rifle. According to the Constitution, we absolutely should be exactly as well equipped as an infantryman. This prevents government overreach. It's a critical part of what makes America, America, and it's built into our founding document. So here's the part where the left calls me crazy and paranoid. But you live in a country that was founded by folks who took up arms against the government. Do you like the government right now, folks on the left? Do you like Trump? Yet you are so willing to give up your right to defend yourself against that government should it overreach and begin stripping you of your rights. Or what if a Democratic president strips you of your rights? Both parties want to strip you of your rights. It just depends on which set you're more comfortable with losing. I'm picking on Trump's government because, well, it'll get the left's attention, but really both parties are waiting in the wings, just ready to strip you of your rights. Next, our dear friend says, why exactly is this legal and allowed? There's no practical reason for anybody to own an AR-15, AK-47, SCAR, any rifle based on a military-grade AR that can hold 30 rounds per mag. People buy them because they're fun and they can, not because there's a practical reason for them. You don't need one for self-defense, concealed carry, hunting. Some assholes will use them for hunting, but you don't need a fucking AR-15 to shoot a deer. We're essentially making people the apex predator. There's nothing the police can do to effectively one-up a person with an AR-15. They can match the danger, but can't beat it because it's literally the pinnacle of handheld firearms. The fact that they're not only legal, but no more difficult to buy than a handgun in the majority of states is absurd. End of quote. You're right that it's absurd, that it's hard to buy a handgun in some states. You're right. It should be very easy to buy a handgun in any state, any day of the week. I already covered why such weapons are legal and allowed. It's very simple. Such weapons are our insurance policy, and even then, we are still less well-equipped than the military thanks to the NFA. There's no point in bringing hunting into this. The Second Amendment has fuck all to do with hunting. It's about defending yourself from the government. You mentioned the police. I don't like the police generally. The police in many places, my town included, look more and more like a military unit all the time, armed with military hardware riding in military vehicles. By the way, I'm not saying that all police are bad. That's not what I mean. There are a lot of really great cops. I'm just saying that the role that the police play in our society presently is very strange, and they don't seem like civilian organizations in many places. So, back to your point, I certainly hope that I stand a chance against the police. That's the entire point. Cops in America shoot a lot of people. Do you think that cops are awesome, or do you think that they shoot far too many people? I'll tell you this, my black friends all own AR-15s because they are scared to death of the cops. And if I was black in America, I would be too. It's fine for you to voluntarily disarm, but for lots of folks, many of them minorities, that's not a very good idea. Most gun control laws have racist origins, though you probably know that. As one of my African-American friends said, I don't need the police to protect me, I need protection from the police. Finally, he says, a lot of what we do in our laws can sometimes be described as mitigation. I count making it so a person that wants to shoot up a school use, let's say, a Glock 19 a mitigation. People will still die, but the overall body count will almost always be way lower given the natures of the guns. Rifle round wounds in general are more fatal due to there often being an entrance and exit wound, which may sound good to the uneducated, but it's actually way less survivable typically. Obviously, hollow points can do a lot of damage as well, but even so, I'd rather get shot by a handgun. Also, keep in mind that the AR-15 carries way more bullets per a mag and is more accurate and easier to control. The guy that shot up that concert from a hotel room in California would have been a lot less effective without an AR. Don't you agree? is tough reading stuff that has not been edited for grammar. That's the end of the quote. And also, yeah, it was in California, as we all know. The left focuses on mass shootings because they're so visible. But the numbers are small. We all know this. But more than that, we all know that mass shootings can be stopped by folks shooting the shooter. I get tired of saying it. It's exhausting. There's a bazillion guns out there, and all the liberal hope in the world isn't going to change that. Instead, come to terms with the fact that the only way to stop mass shootings is to shoot the person attempting one. I get so fucking tired of saying it. No buyback, no ban is going to stop mass shootings. The only thing that will stop a mass shooting is shooting the person doing the shooting. That's the only way. Like I told you in the intro, I've been close to such an event. I've been closer to one than almost all the people watching this, and that gives me a little bit of clarity. Guns and the threat of guns are the only way to stop mass shootings in America, and I don't care how much you don't like it. All of this shit about which bullets do the most damage and how handguns aren't as powerful, none of that shit matters. It's all pointless minutia. It's a distraction. There are very few mass shootings, and we can't restrict gun rights for the 1,000 million trillion reasons I mentioned earlier. And even then, guns stop mass shootings. None of the minutia matters. And hey, let's look at Europe, as liberals are so fond of doing. When guns aren't present, we see bombings, trucks running over people, and they still get guns, don't they? In the face of a bomb, it seems awfully silly to argue about the differences between M193 ball and 9mm hollow points, doesn't it? Like the right, the left just parrots the same tired arguments, the same dubious numbers, always eager to give up rights. Earlier, we talked about collectivism versus individualism. Neither party represents either idea anymore, and few people seem to recognize this. Republicans want to limit certain free speech, freedom of the press, and they want to institute Christian laws. They want to police the human body. Liberals want to control free speech and limit how you can protect yourself and control how you spend your money. I don't see much of a difference there. Either way, you're not gaining any rights, you're just choosing which set of rights you want to lose. That's not a fucking good deal, is it? That fucking sucks. That's terrible. When I was a kid, I thought I would have more rights by now, not less. So instead, let's be our own people with our own thoughts and opinions, hopefully complex, fully formed opinions. Don't fear what the other people in your party might say. Let's start a new party. Party hard. Party time, excellent. Let's become something better. Look, the people on the other side of the political thought spectrum, you have more in common with them than you have differences. They want the same things that you do. They want their families to be safe. They want to be safe. They want their families and their country to prosper. That's what we all want. So the next time you're thinking, man, you believe differently than me, you big, stupid, dumb, I hate you so much, just stop and think, this is fucking petty. We all want the same things. We just disagree about how to best go about achieving those things. So in all seriousness, if we rally around those similarities, we can do some actual good. Truly, we can. We can be pretty good friends. A lot of the folks you see in the comments, they don't believe the same shit that I believe, but we've gotten to be good friends because we have similar goals and long-term aims. So seek to make friends with the opposition, or better yet, don't think of them as the opposition. They're your fucking fellow Americans. They're your fellow humans. Love them and cherish them and respect their thoughts and opinions, and we'll probably find that we can make this country pretty awesome. And by the way, while I'm saying that, I absolutely detest this idea that we need to make America great again. America is pretty fucking awesome right now, and all of you are pretty fucking awesome right now. I love all of you. Thank you so much for watching. I know this was very long and very rambly. I kind of had a script hitting some of the high points, but generally this was improvised and off the cuff, so it is probably completely batshit insane, but you're a real champ for suffering through it. Thank you so much. I hope you all have a wonderful evening, and I will talk to you soon. Good night.